10:01, give some people who are a little bit behind before we get going. No music this morning. Oh my goodness.
There was music when I joined the session. Where's the music?
You went away really well. There's Marlies kind of having that conversation. I was like, I don't know. We try to avoid any sort of.
We'll do one dance off for like 30 seconds.
Do like one
head bob, and then we'll get this party going.
Just a quick head bob, just a quick one.
Yeah, just one. One beat drop, right?
Yeah, here it comes.
Ready, Josh? All right, that's it.
We shouldn't be that. Yeah. All right, the adage is true. Josh can't dance. Oh my goodness. I hope that doesn't go on YouTube. Shaylin, when we finish that recording, we need to edit. Can we edit that part out?
No, I'm recording. I'm not going to edit it. It's going to be our flavor of the month. So.
All right, guys. So, screen should be up. You should be able to see it. Good morning. Welcome back. We're at week 5. Thank you guys for sticking it through us with us this far. Really, really appreciate it. Welcome back to work. I say work, but it's going to be a lot of fun. It's we're talking about prototyping and pilots and tests, and we want to start off with a breakout space to kind of get everybody to say hello to each other, do a little bit of networking. But we want you guys to talk about, what do you guys think the difference between a prototype and a pilot is? What are the pros and cons that you understand between the two? And we just want you to say hello to somebody. So I don't want to hear myself speak the whole time because I don't even like my voice. So, Ali, let me know when you're ready to go.
Let's make it happen.
Let's make it happen. Here we go. You guys should see a message out at the front there. Click that join button. I want you to unmute your mic too and have a conversation, all right? Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Complain?
How things with you? Can you hear me?
There's Ali.
Hey, folks. Hey.
Can you hear me?
I can, Sarah.
Yep.
How are you?
Oh, good.
All right. So, what do you guys think the difference between a prototype and a pilot is?
So a prototype, in my opinion, is when you're just kind of thinking about what it will look like. But a pilot is actually testing what you have kind of designed.
Right. What about you, Alex? What do you think?
To me, I see a pilot as a very well flushed out, very complete idea or program or product, where a prototype is, I guess, you have more iterations with a prototype, so you just go use it, see it, make a change. I guess closer to a PDSA cycle than a pilot. To me, is they've already made the decisions of what it's going to look like and what it's going to do, and I think a pilot takes, usually it's a bit longer, where a prototype, it could be a very short process since you just want that constant improvement.
Yeah, I would agree with both of you guys. And what do you think is more common in healthcare right now?
I think I'm beginning to see, the little experience that I have is I've seen prototypes. I've not had a lot of experience in the field, so I'm not too sure in terms of pilots.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I see more pilot, pilot projects and pilot programs. I don't think in my time in healthcare, actually, I haven't really seen a prototype. So.
No, and we're still we want to. There's some a language they use right now is called PDSAs a little bit. They use. But really, through testing and prototyping we're far away from that, because we want to make everything perfect. We want everything to be just right before we expose ourselves to feedback. And so I 100% agree. How are you guys doing otherwise? I'm just gonna make sure that I.
So question for you. Sorry, you said what's more common now?
Pilot is still way common in
Okay.
healthcare because that's how we work. So
I guess because of the time, also the crunch, right? So people want to kind of just skip the prototype and things like that.
Exactly. And so it's, but we have this thing that we have to make it perfect before we launch it.
Yeah.
Right? Would you agree, Alex?
Yeah, totally. Just in my work, that's been the case. So definitely trying to change things and shift things when I can, but yeah, so far it's hard to make that systematic change. So.
Yeah, and people are just very like apprehensive of showing their ugly baby, we call it, right?
For sure.
It's not perfect. I'm like, that's the point. It's not supposed to be perfect. So, and but then when what I love about it at the end is they say is like, well, now we need a buy-in strategy.
Yeah. No kidding.
Like, how we gotta make people like our product because it's so perfect. So, okay, we're just about to jump off the breakout rooms. You guys should be able.
Are we all back?
We are back, Josh.
We are back because we're back from outer space. How'd that go for everybody? Good? There's a lot of energy in my room. It's fantastic. Marlies kind of took over, but that's okay. So I want to hear from you guys. What did you talk about in your breakout rooms? Ali, pick on somebody for me.
You know what? I'm gonna pick someone that we haven't picked on in a long while. Okay, let's pick on Julie Robbins. Julie, unmute yourself. What did you guys talk about? Awkward silence. All right. we're gonna try jumping onto, what about Dee Dee? You guys know where the, yes.
Well, there was good conversation, but a few of us being from healthcare don't use the word prototype.
Yes.
In our industry. Kareem's group had some good feedback. You would probably get some very good conversation from there and input into this.
What language do you guys use, Dee Dee? What do you guys use? Tests? Do you call it tests or?
Testing, piloting. With us, I work a lot in education, and a lot of it we pilot different programs, but we never, of course, because it's not, with us, that's more technology or product related to go to prototypes. So we may pilot different programs that we're rolling out, but yeah, the term prototype is never used.
Interesting.
So this is a fantastic slide that Ali has stolen from somebody else, the Bromford Lab. And it kind of talks about that little bit of the difference between tests and pilots. And we're going to be going through this today with you guys. Again, we have somebody who's here to share their expertise with us. We'll introduce him shortly. This is where we're at on the healthcare sprint. We have done the discover and we have done the design. So we have done that ideate and decide piece. And that was a bit of your guys' homework from last week. And we want to talk about our faves. So we had a bunch of people send us things on Twitter. They tagged us. They sent us emails. And we were actually really excited about this one. So they may not be a Picasso, but there's something that I really loved here. And they used strong symbols to represent their idea. It was fantastic. It looks like it was done on paint, which for one, kudos to, I'm not going to say who did this, just in case they didn't want their drawings out to the world, but kudos for using a program that's terrible, was not designed for the user, but B, you like putting it out there and building something. And I can definitely see what you're trying to produce. Ali, we had another favorite.
Yeah, there's a good and the bad about it. What I love about it is it's so specific in this ideation solution sketch that they did, because they were targeting very specific patient safety, medication safety related things. And they had, what I like about the last panel is they talk about the benefits right away, saying this is going to happen, this is going to be the benefit of doing this, my change. Of course, one feedback for me would be is, come on, less tech.
Yeah, where's the draw on that?
Hello? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
I
You got me
can.
back? I lost my audio for some reason. I love technology. Ali, do you want to introduce our speaker?
Yes, let's do this. So we got another special guest today, and all the way from Netherlands. His name is Robin Hooijer. He is a design thinker from the Reshape and Innovation Center, and he's going to be talking to us about prototyping. And I'm going to now give him the reins to present, and I'm very excited to learn about his world.
You're muted, Robin.
Yep.
There we go.
When I'm in full screen, I can't unmute myself, so that's lesson 1 from this prototyping session. So we're going to talk about prototyping session, about prototyping in human-centered design or design thinking. And I just want to briefly show you the model that we're using, but mostly to show them that it's basically the same as all the other models. So all the other models resemble each other in some way. And for me, prototyping is mostly because you want to make something tangible. And I'm very curious to hear a bit more about the discussion from just now. Maybe we can use the chat for that as well. So for those of you that don't want to use their mic or are better in text, just I want to hear some of the ideas that you have on why should you prototype? And in the meantime, I will try to open my chat without a cursor.
Robin, and we call it, we want to show our ugly baby.
We want to show our ugly baby. All right. Is that the moment where people say, you have such a nice baby?
No. I like how Kareem said, it's cheaper than a full pilot. Yep.
It's cheaper, yeah. That's something from the discussion just now, of course, that what's the difference between a prototype and a pilot? That a pilot is most often considered something bigger, maybe containing multiple and high fidelity prototypes. Mm-hmm. Prototype does not have the back infrastructure. I really like the one that's put up just now by Kareem, an opportunity to work out the kinks in an idea. And maybe another reason, when you're working, especially when you're working in healthcare, everything is about evidence-based. Where's the evidence? Why would your idea actually change something? And what's the impact? What's the effect? And a prototype doesn't show that it will affect like 80% of the patients, but it will help the doctor and the nurse to be shown what's the idea all about. So everyone can all agree about concept. I really like this quote from IDEO: if a picture is worth 1,000 words, and a prototype is worth 1,000 meetings, because you can go on and on and on and on about a concept or an idea. But when you're building a prototype, then it gets messy. And then you, like Kareem said, it's an opportunity to work out the kinks in an idea. You really have to dive into some of the nasty details in your idea that suddenly stops working when you try to make it tangible. So it's a bit of after the ideation phase where creativity is key and everything is allowed, then the prototype phase is also something to put you back on earth and really help you focus. And in a way, I think I saw it somewhere in the suggestions as well. It's Well, it's about fast failing. It's your first attempt in learning, and in a way, it's also a bit like cycling. It's a bit like taking off the extra wheels of your kid's bicycle and just see what happens. But the big difference, there's also a big difference when you're prototyping anything and the kid that cycles. Because when the kid is cycling, you either see him succeed or you see him fall or ride into something. And when you're prototyping your idea, when you're really trying to find out what is my idea all about, then there are a lot of more variables, also some that you won't be able to predict. So it's about what you want to know and what is out there that you want to know, but you can't predict upfront. And that is also what makes it different from testing. Because normally when we're talking about prototyping, we build, we measure, we learn. I think I saw the plan, do, check, act somewhere in the chat as well. But this is really what's prototyping all about. It's building and learning from building. It's while making your idea tangible, you're filtering out the details. And I'll show you some examples on how to do this in a couple of slides. But it's, of course, when you're starting testing, then you go back to measuring specifics and learning from that. But here it's about learning from building it, learning from showing it. So it's a learning process in itself. And when you think about what can you prototype, I think we've made this more difficult in the past years. Because like 10 years ago, all the ideas consisted of an app. And when you wanted to try out an app, well, you created a lo-fi prototype. You just started sketching, or maybe you made some wireframes. But now we all talk about platforms. Everything is a platform. And it's not really that we've changed the vocabulary, but we've started to realize that most of these need more than just an app. It's about the whole process, and there are multiple touch points to a concept. So it's all about on which moments and how does stakeholder X, and it could be your target audience, it could be one of the, for instance in healthcare, one of the healthcare professionals, but one of the stakeholders is interacting with your concept. And he or she is doing this in a different way than the other stakeholder. So you have your concept, you have the elements that are part of your concept, and I'll try to make this tangible as well in some examples. But those elements have different touch points. For instance, I'm going to skip through a couple of slides because I know that you've seen this example before. I think the previous speaker from last week's session talked about the Hooijer patient journey or customer journey. And what's interesting here is, I really like this image, by the way. It's a really good simplification, actually, of the whole Hooijer process. Because it's about the customer journey. It's about what the user does with Hooijer. It's not about the thing that happens in between. Because yes, when Hooijer started, they focused on the customer, but they also focused on what was on the back end. So what was happening for the taxi driver. And everything that was in between, like the special algorithms that are being used for the rating system or to decide which cab should go to which user. Those are our details which aren't really necessary for this concept or aren't really as important as the other ones. So you have the pick me up from the end user perspective, but you also have the who should I pick up from the taxi driver perspectives. And these are the two most important touch points for Hooijer, which is a big platform. If you think about it and you really dive into their IT architecture, then it's a big, messy company. Then there's a lot of people working on whole other things than taxi driving or bringing people from A to B. But these touch points, those were the ones that were most important. And I'm sorry for the Dutch on this image. So Marlies would probably be able to read this over here. But I wanted to give another example from one of the chatbots we've been working on. We developed a chatbot for people with diabetes to give them more insights on what's healthy food, or what should or shouldn't I drink, but also for questions about medication or moving in relation to their glucose levels. And when we started out this idea, it started from a lot of people saying, well, we do have questions, but we don't really ask them to our doctor, since we feel a bit ashamed that we didn't know certain things. But also in most of the cases, the GP, the local doctor, was simply taking too much time to answer the questions, so they didn't bother at all. And if they bothered, then it would take up to 2 months for getting an answer. And the answer would be, well, let's use a chatbot. But then we really found out, well, this is not just working when you're giving this as a solution. We really have to dive into what are the touch points, what are the use cases, the moments that people will actually use this concept. So we started walking with a group of people with diabetes, going to the supermarket with them, and finding out what are the specific points where they have these questions. When do these questions arise, and what do they want to do? What do they think of when going to, for instance, the GP with their questions? And we had to translate that to a specific chatbot. So again, let's go back to the slide with all the touch points. I think this one over here. Like we had a couple of elements in this concept, but for us the most important element was just finding the right use cases, finding the right moments where people would be interested and motivated enough to open up their phones and ask a question to, in this case, Susan, the name of the chatbot. Please interrupt me when I'm going too fast or where you have a question. It will take me some time to go to the chat since I'm not seeing my cursor, but if you have any questions, please do. And I will try to make the amount of talking from my side as short as possible. So some examples of how can you prototype. I think I just saw one of the best ones. I stole this just now while you were presenting this, because I think this is like the first primal version of a prototype. It's something that makes your idea tangible or visible. And of course, this doesn't explain the whole idea, but it helps visualizing in what are we talking about. For instance, when we're talking about a whistle, and I do hope that the third image is a whistle, but when we're talking about a whistle, you can have like a zillion images in your mind that you could be talking about, but this really shows what it is about. Definitely a whistle. Okay, great. Good to hear that. But on the other hand, like the stickman approach is like the best approach for starting your storyboard, starting to visualize your story around your concept. It's when we think about prototypes, we often think about technology. We often think about like wireframes and apps and websites. But a storyboard, something that makes your idea more into something visible, something that speaks the same language for everyone, that's your first step in prototyping. So you could say that there are different levels in prototyping. Don't go into like, if your prototype storyboard looks like this, then you've put in way too much effort. And I'm saying this from my perspective because I can't draw at all. So for others, it might be quite easy to draw something like this, but what I really want to emphasize on is don't put too much effort in creating your storyboard. At least not for the first time, because you want to create your storyboard and shuffle a little bit in the images you've created to make sure that do we have all the messy details. And when you're visualizing a story, when you're visualizing a use case, you suddenly start thinking about what are the surroundings of my end user. I recently spoke to a group that's creating a doctor app, a bit like the Susan chatbot I just showed you, but then for any symptoms you have. And they said, well, we are going to focus on employees, and we expect our customers to be using our app while they're working. All right. So what's the big difference when someone is working instead of when they're home? They're behind the desk, yes, but also they have colleagues. So what happens when they fill in all the symptoms and something really bad happens? Something comes up that says, well, maybe you should go to the ER right now. That makes the whole journey quite a lot different when you're around colleagues. People asking questions why are you running off? It's a complete different story from when you're at home. Again, it's about showing what's going on. But it also can lead to unintended consequences. What you're seeing here is the start of a paper prototype for a digital game. We created a game for people with hemophilia. So it's a disease where you can get spontaneous bleedings, mostly like in your knee or elbow, but also when you hit a table or something, you can just start bleeding. And there's medication for this, but it's quite difficult to manage your medication related to your daily activity. So we created a game where people could try this out, but because we wanted to make it digitally, we could try different medication schemes and see and learn more about the activities of all users. So we started paper prototyping, just like this. But what happened was when we tested this out with patients, a couple of parents of the patients, and also the doctors, the hematologists, they said, well, this is actually quite an interesting tool to educate our patients on what is this disease all about. So in the end, we do have the app, but we also have this game, which is a card/board game that people can use to explain what is this disease, can learn more about this. And we're also working on a child's version, just specifically for primary schools to teach teachers more about this disease, teach the friends of the kids that have this disease more about what is it. And it's like an unintended consequence, because we didn't want to create this board game up front, but it suddenly showed into a need that was there. And here's just one of the early stage screenshots from the app. I think you can download it. I can look up the link later if people want to try it out. Again, the digital one is still in prototyping phase. And as I'm saying it, it's also like, I shouldn't do this. Like the feeling I just had, it's not good enough. I should embrace that feeling, because when you're creating your prototype and when you're showing it to someone else for the first time, you will most definitely have this feeling of it's not good enough. And you should embrace that and still show it. Because when you're showing a prototype, when you're building a prototype that feels like, yeah, this is something that's really awesome and I really want to show this, then you've put way too much effort in it. Because leaving out details in your prototypes enables end users it enables end users to, how do you say that? Well, think about the details for themselves. They think about how should I or how could I use this product? Embrace good enough, exactly. That should be the hashtag of this week. And when you're not digitally skilled to create your first prototype, just get some scissors, get some paper, print out a mobile phone, and just start creating your interaction with paper. I really like this example because they even, I like it because they even make sure that the buttons were loose papers, but you could also say that that's something that's maybe too much into detail. Again, it's about what do you want to get out of this. One of our first prototypes for a children's app, which was all about doing some exercises. Well, it looked like this first on the left, and later it looked like the right one, and it was still messy, but we learned quite soon that kids found this useful, but what they really liked was they got a reward, which was spaghetti or whatever their parents would say if they made a week full of exercises. And this is something we tried low fidelity. Don't put in too much effort, because especially kids are very good at this, filling in the details and telling you how it should look like, but it should work for everyone. And these are more of the prototyping apps and platforms, but you can prototype basically everything. What you see here, and I hope the animation is smooth enough on your screens, is an image of our operation rooms. And no, this is not the real operation room, but it is the exact same size prototype of the operation rooms. You see the duct tape on papers on the cardboards, and that's where screens would go, where closets would go. The lines on the ground floor, maybe you can see the red line. That's where the operating team would be around the operation table. And they actually designed this with surgeons, with anesthesiologists, to try out different kind of settings for operation rooms or for operations, and just created the operation room out of cardboard, basically. And I really wanted to show this example as well, because it's from one of the hackathons. I saw it was listed in the introduction for me. We're organizing, well, it came from Canada, actually. So we're really proud to work with Canadians on this, the Hacking Health movement. That's where people just want to, well, they put all their efforts in creating a prototype in a weekend, but they use all the materials. Yeah, that's true. That's Martijn. You recognize him, Marlies. That's Martijn. He's been in Canada for a couple of months. Yes. And it was a pity that he was in Canada, actually, because he missed our last hackathon. He joined all the previous hackathons. And he's really good at using all kinds of materials to create some example. So this was a curved screen that could rotate into any position for patients. And they just used a photo camera standard and some tin foil, some plastic, and there you go. They have a prototype. And this is more of, this is something that you could describe as maybe even a pilot. The printed materials you see are the image of a tumor. And the lady on the right just heard that she had to stay awake during her operation. She had to stay awake because the little orange area that the doctor is pointing at is her language processing area in the brain. And what we didn't really expect, we wanted to use this to better inform our patient. But then she said, can I take this home? Because I want to inform my family, I want to inform my friends what's going on, why I should be awake, but also just to show them what's in my head. Because I don't look sick, but I do feel sick. And this helps me in, in sharing that story. Again, unintended consequences. So here are just some examples on what you can do to prototype your concept, your touch points. And as you can see, you've learned a little bit more about customer journey mapping last week, I guess. That's also part of prototyping. That's also something, again, to make your idea tangible. You can even do a role play to see whether a specific scenario would work out in reality. Because it's quite easy to come up with the concept, but it's really hard to make it really work in reality. And oh yeah, this I also almost forgot about this slide because we just put it in like a minute before we started. But we really wanted to talk with you about some of your projects, because you've been all working on projects in this design school, and maybe we can talk about some of your projects and see how could we create a prototype for your project. And Ali, I really need your help over here. Should we go into breakouts for this, or just try to make it into a group discussion?
I think breakouts will happen. People are usually much more comfortable speaking in a breakout. So let me set that up. So the question you're asking, Robin, is how would they create a prototype for their own personal challenge? And you can,
Yes.
I'm going to set up the breakout rooms right now. Just give me 1 second. And you guys should be going into right away. We'll give you guys about 5 minutes to talk about this. And just click on the join button and should be jumping in on.
All right, I'll try without a cursor.
Ali, do you stay here at the main room or are you joining in?
I'm joining in.
Okay.
The trauma-informed nature of my health center, both for patients and providers.
The trauma-informed nature, what does that mean?
Well, just we're not a very trauma-informed system, but we recruit the community members, the population that has very high rates of trauma. So we have staff burnout, turnover like every 6 months, and our patients are completely traumatized by their healthcare experience in our space on a daily basis. So they're wanting to hire someone externally for trauma-informed training, and they think it's going to be just like one and done. But I'm trying to figure out, well, what else could we be doing?
So, interestingly, that's not dissimilar to, I'm from the patient side, and, my father has dementia, and I don't know if I would use the word trauma, but definitely the experiences that we've had, would probably fit into some sort of the type of prototype you might be designing. And so, because I was actually just thinking, like, I guess that I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around like how you prototype something like that and how you make that different from a pilot or a test. That's like, I still don't really get, like, I think you can test things. So I don't know if a prototype test is kind of the same thing, or what are you thinking for your idea?
Well, we have like a QI team and a QI set of initiatives right now. So it would be very easy for us to just piggyback onto what the QI is doing and just say, hey, let's try this out. Let's try this signage at the desk. Let's try, making it a more patient-friendly experience, like change the way our rooms are set up. Like there's so many things we could just do without having funding or management involved and all those things that a pilot would entail. Anyway, sorry, I feel like I'm hijacking.
No, not at all. Well, and it's interesting. I have to say that signage is one of the things that I think there's some signs I would like to go into every office and rip off the wall. The one that says you can only talk to me about one issue, like talking about putting up barriers and making you feel like no one's really interested in seeing you before you even basically get through the door. And anyhow, so I guess there are little things you can do.
Yeah, our signage would be, medicine wheels and rainbow flags and, just helping people feel included and welcomed. But yes, I totally understand what you're saying. And yeah, it's true. Like the QI team was like, we're going to write all these things about, what's not okay in terms of behavior. And we're going to put signs everywhere. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so oppressive. So yeah, it's just
that's
trying
awesome.
to figure out. Yeah.
I'm doing working with children's mental health right now, and we're in the prototyping phase, and we've created this kind of new pathway and kind of working with some of the stakeholders, the schools and AHS. And to be honest, there's one thing for sure is everyone's anxious about the first prototype, because we just said we're not gonna pontificate, we're not gonna create the perfect form or the perfect tool. We're going to use what we have. It may look kind of like, duct tapey, but we'll try it enough and just let the users and the experience dictate that learning, because people spend a lot of time trying to perfect things that may not even matter at the end, and wordsmith the crap out of things. So we're in that phase right now, and it's anxiety because everyone's like, oh my God, this is what's going to people, but it's that feeling of just try it out. And each time when we have done that, our priorities have always been shifted because the user loves things that we thought were not really important. And so it's just like, okay, now we know. And we sometimes, we end debates among team members just by saying, well, take it to the user, let them see it. And if they were the ultimate deciding factor in saying what they like or not. So that's been my experience.
Well, but I think that you're right, Ellie. And one thing that I think sometimes even gets overlooked in the concept of signage or even what we do is like sometimes is the attitude. like just a simple attitude, someone taking the time to greet you. And even if, I mean, we know that doctors' offices are busy, but even if someone just says, you know, hi, welcome, sorry that we're busy, you're going to have to wait, even that is more than you get a lot of times.
And Lisa, I think you've just hit the nail on the head of why it's a prototype instead of a pilot, because to make that kind of small culture shift and just say, hey, this is something we're going to do, really focus on this for the next month, that's a prototype. You know, it's something small that you don't have to, you know, have leadership and stakeholder engagement and funding and all these things that a pilot entails. Prototyping can be scrappy like that.
Yeah, it's how and Con, you're just saying the same thing. Sometimes it's we have to go from the concept level of what the problem is to the point of what exactly we want to change, and it might look small in terms of the bigger scheme of things, but that's something tangible you can come to and kind of switch around with. And we're just about to run out of time.
Whew. It populates fast when everybody's coming back. Robin, just make sure to unmute your mic because it mutes automatically when we come back from breakout spaces. And of course, it turns off your slides.
All right. It should show again.
Yeah, we're good.
All right. Well, we had a really interesting discussion in our group about how to prototype processes, like the project that they were working on. Let's see if I can get the name up again, because I'm really bad at names, so I really need the image there. Kareem told us a bit more about the process they were designing, and we're asking, well, how can we prototype anything like that? And Marlies explained it quite well, I think. You use role plays and you just start talking about the process as well. Designing the process and trying it out is your first prototype. And I shared an example there about a nurse that wanted to find out more about what patients found interesting, but also had to deal with some of the nurses on their department finding the moments with patients less and less important than the clinical tasks. So she set it up as followed. The nurses that were involved in the research had to ask patients, what do you think is important care? And just by doing this, the whole culture shifted on that department from clinical tasks being most important to, well, I can learn from patients directly and give them attention, emphasize with them. That's what my job is all about. And I really love that you feel less hesitant now about sharing your ugly babies, Katie. And just some extra tips to close off with. I really like this story from Josina Vink, a fellow healthcare designer who just recently got her PhD in healthcare design. And she says, when you're building your prototype, look behind the pickles. And it's a bit like you're sitting at home Sunday afternoon, you don't really feel like going to the mall and getting some food, and you just open up the fridge and see what is in there. What can I use to get myself a meal, something to feed myself? And that's also how you should build your first prototype. Just use what you have. You don't need to go into a doctor's office to role play something with a patient. You just use any regular desk and maybe a closed door for your first prototype. Exactly, use what you have. And I think I've mentioned this 10 or 20 times, maybe even this session already. The unexpected consequences. They are so important. To don't only look at what you want to achieve, but also what's happening. What's happening to the people that are involved in the prototype, that are using it, that are building it. What's the discussion that starts when the prototype is being built? And don't build it yourself, build it with the end user. And of course, invite the devil's advocate. Because also for your prototypes, when you're talking about creativity, everything is allowed, yes. But when you're building your prototypes, you want to have some of your most critical and skeptical colleagues hopping in on the discussion, because their feedback is either something you should take care of anyway later in the process. It might be resistance to change, but it could also be that they have some very important feedback, some very important items to change. In conclusion, this is how you could set up your design. You can prototype to better understand your target audience. You could prototype to better define what's going on. You could prototype to better ideate, to come up with new ideas, or to use and molest your model that you've been using. You can prototype in an iterative way to make your designs better. I know that design thinking is a lot about the phases, but it's when you feel like you're stuck in your project, try to make something tangible and see what comes out of it, because people will respond if they don't feel like it's the thing that they really need, and you can start from there. I will share this slide with you. I think Ali has the slides already. These are some of the links we use for digital prototyping, and I just wanted to point out the toolkit we have over here. And I really wanted to use the annotate function somewhere in my presentation. So here it goes. I'm drawing a line. That's the toolkit we created for several design thinking templates. Feel free to use it. And that was my part. So thank you for hopping in.
That was amazing, Robin. That was really nice. I want to just open up the mics and people text box if anyone has any questions right now for Robin. Robin, one question I had, just for the sake of time, I just want to ask you in your kind of experience, is why there's hesitation for people to prototype? Like why do you find that?
I think, again, Katie described it. People are feeling hesitant to share their ugly babies because it's you don't show off your good work, you show off your ugly work. It's almost there's some shame in it. There's people want to show that, look, I can create pretty things. I've thought about this. And when you're showing your ugly baby, then you allow people to criticize you, and you have to make sure that people are not criticizing you, but criticizing your idea or your prototype. And that's where people tend to feel uncomfortable.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you so much. So, Josh, we will switch over to our presentation. Robin, please stay on the line. We have another 11 minutes to go, and let's get to finish our rest of the webinar.
All right.
Josh, are you going to be presenting?
Yeah. Robin just has to stop sharing. There we go. Perfect. All right, guys. Thanks, Robin, for sharing your wealth of knowledge with prototyping. I learned a lot. I love your photos and everything as well. I'm going to be stealing those and using them in the future. So you guys have just learned from Robin a lot about day 2. So day 2 within this healthcare design sprint is all about doing what he just talked about. Storyboarding, building that prototype, and sharing that ugly baby. Let that ugly baby fly. Put those pictures out there for the world to see. Oh, goodness. My slides aren't going to switch now. Here we go. Okay, so storyboarding. Ali, do you want to go through this?
Sure. So remember when the day 2, when you have an idea and you guys have decided that there's going to be a solution you want to work on, the first step we do is storyboarding, which is basically saying is that how can you create a simple narrative of what that solution would look like and how the user would interact with it. And just like the storyboard that Robin was talking about, you try to look at the magic moment. Let's just say that the user is going to use your new kind of app, or could be your nice new service, and they're going to get a unique experience. And so what we say to people is, focus on the magic moment and then try to build something. What's the story before it and what's the story after it? And it's not supposed to be too intense. We usually try to cover it between 8 or 10 kind of these drawing boxes that we draw with the team together. And we use this as what we call is our template. So how are we going to actually start building the prototype and test it out? Next slide, please. So once you have created the storyboard, now it's the prototype mode. Next slide. What we're going to do is really I'm not going to go much in this. Robin has done a really good job with this. It's really creating what we call as a facade with what you have, creating the more bare minimal, and you might have heard this word called the minimal viable product or the minimal viable experience. It's really, you could scratch something on paper, draw it out, and show something to your user or your target audience and hear from them if they like it or not. So we have done multiple ones. We have done these kind of product prototypes, which is literally somebody wanted to create a plush toy to help people feel like, when they want to get a service, they have this toy that they can has the name and the number on it. We've also done service prototypes. Next slide, please. Where we actually mocked using the sitting in a room and going through a process flow online and using even Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp messengers to create that communication piece. And it's really about being creative. And Robin showed a beautiful example of prototyping an OR room. And ultimately, it's being very creative and scrappy with what you have. And so once you build a prototype, it really comes down to is we're going to test it. And in the elderly loneliness, Josh, do you want to just explain?
You betcha. So with the elderly loneliness, the team kind of struggled with building their prototype. They're like, what can we share? And it was a bit of a push to get them to just kind of make something and put it out to the world. So we started out with these really low fidelity brochures and posters and things that they could just show to their user and not say a word and let them kind of experience it and get their feedback. So as you can see with Post-it notes, we love them, pens, paper, and just trying to make something. So eventually someone busted out a laptop and they said, let's make it a little bit nicer looking. So they brought up Canva and they said, okay, let's make this brochure something that may look like a little bit more like a finished product. And then of course, the same thing, okay, Canva's working well. We're going to make a poster. So we got a poster we can show and a brochure and just kind of say this is a service, and what would you guys do with it? So we jumped right into testing. So we invited 5 users or potential users for our service to come and actually experience those posters and those pamphlets, get information from them. So sprints, they say 5 users, because that's enough to kind of reveal some really big patterns and have a really good idea of, are you on the right track or on the wrong track? Is what we're making actually what the user thinks that they need, and that would help them with their problem. And we look for feedback just like this, things I liked, things that can be improved, new ideas maybe that we didn't think of while we were developing this prototype, and then maybe things that they didn't understand or they weren't too sure about their product. So this is just a photo of some users coming and experiencing. So we actually printed out a bunch of the brochures. We showed them some of the tech from the laptop side, showed them some of the tech, and got their input. And really quickly, we started to learn, okay, we are on the right path, so that at the end of this, we knew, okay, we need to keep going because this is something that they actually want. And they believed as users that it could help combat elderly loneliness. And we learned that in only an afternoon, which is really, really valuable. So I just want you guys quickly in the text box on the side, all of your personal challenges. I want you guys to quickly think about who are your user group? Who are people that you'd love to test with or show your ugly baby? Type it in the side or unmute your mic. Who would you want to share it with? Patience. I love that. Samira, thank you. I was hoping I would see this. A lot of times in healthcare, we're really nervous about showing our ugly baby to patients or the real user group. Anyone else? For sure. Ali, can you think of anyone?
Kareem put in healthcare providers and hospital staff. So I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. It's all about getting their input because it's extremely valuable. They're going to use it, so they should be testing it. It's just that simple.
And Robin said nurses, and I'm like 100% agree with that.
So Ali?
All right. So folks, so what we have done is day 2 just finished for us. And day 2 is a fun day because you've done your prototyping, you've done your testing with users, and we've gotten feedback. And now you know what the verdict is. If the users love it, that means it's an epic win because that was what you're trying to do. You were trying to create a solution that the users would love, and then you can now move forward with it. If the user didn't love it, they said, maybe you changed this, maybe doing that. Well, you didn't hit the mark. But hey, you just only spent 2 days on a solution, and hence it's an efficient failure. And sometimes you might have users saying like, nope, you're way off track. But they give you really valuable feedback saying like, look, if I were you, I would do this. And so it becomes a flawed success, which is telling you that, okay, you quickly learned something in 2 days, didn't work, but now we have the right track now, and we can do this again. And so these are ultimately the 3 outcomes you get. And there's not a loss scenario, it's all a learning scenario. And once it's done, the work still keeps going. Next slide, please. So what we want to just finish up today is tell you that Storyboard helps you narrow on the key moments for your prototype. Robin did an amazing job and is ultimately a realistic facade, we say. And the goal of the testing with the users is to learn. And what we're going to do is this week's activity is all about, we want you to really try this. Take whatever ideas you worked on from the previous week, your solution sketch, create something. Could be a little page of your concept or your idea that you put it on. Could it be even a little presentation? Could be even a little, if you want to be crazy, have a Canva kind of thing. And just take it to someone. Could be your friend, could be your colleague, could be your family member, doesn't matter. And get them to just show them and get their feedback. And ask them these 4 questions. That's it. It's not supposed to be an intense thing. And then really reflect on it. And I assure you that experience is where the magic happens, and this being able to show someone your ugly baby. Next week is going to be our final and also exciting week because we have Richard. He is one of our sprint masters. He actually did a sprint in the government. So he has a lot to share with us. And what we're going to do in next week is kind of put it all together for you because we've gone through a lot for the last 4 or 5 weeks. So we want to put it all together for you. We're going to share with you kind of the facilitator's kind of perspective, and someone's running a sprint. What are they going through? What is the prep work required? How does the day look like in terms of facilitating a sprint? And last but not the least, we really want you to now think about questions and things that are unclear to you, things that you don't get. Go back to the workbook, go back to some of our YouTube videos, things that you're not unclear about. We're gonna provide you an opportunity next week to really open it up and ask us questions, because that's gonna be our final chat for final webinar for the Sprint School. And that's it. 10:59. Damn.
It's like we practiced that.
We practiced that. Okay, folks.
So like Ali said, you bring us those questions. If you can think of something, even hit us up on Twitter. We may not answer it there, but we'll bring that question to the day. We'll answer it then. Send us your tweets. We love getting your private messages. It's been so much fun. This journey has been fantastic with you guys for the beta for the first ever virtual Sprint School. Looking forward to seeing you guys all next week. That's it from us.
Bye.